Okay, so the final part of this is to compare your own version of this final paragraph with the example that's going to be presented for you. But what I'm going to do is write my example paragraph for you and talk you through what I'm doing as we go through this part of the commentary. So we're in the final section. So we want to start with the topic sentence. We want to make sure it has those two ingredients. Focus on the writer's choice element that is broadly evident in the final part of the extract, and then an explanation of its meaning. So Shakespeare concludes the extract with Lady Macbeth's spell-like incantation of evil, which confirms her decision to pursue her evil plan. So we've got here the overall element of writer's choices. The style that Shakespeare adopts through this final section of the extract is Lady Macbeth's spell-like incantation of evil. She sounds like she's chanting almost, like an evil witch calling on the supernatural forces to her assistance. And then the meaning of this is a confirmation of her decision to pursue her evil plan. She has decided at this final moment to carry out the action of persuading Macbeth to kill Duncan. Then we've got to find a way to incorporate this first detail. The raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance, that should be, sorry, not entrace, entrance of Duncan under my battlements. So we start here with an oriented phrase that is focused on either the character or the writer. So we might say something like, Lady Macbeth, we're focused on her, begins the extract by, or begins the final section of the extract by comparing the messenger to a raven, by reflecting that, and then we include the quote. The raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Now, importantly, there is the use of a metaphor, the raven himself, the messenger's being compared to a raven. So we need to, A, make sure we use that technical terminology, and then B, comment on the significance of this. So the metaphor she uses, comparing the messenger to a raven, suggests that Duncan will die, as the raven is an ominous symbol of approaching death, comparing this messenger to a bird that symbolizes approaching death. Okay, don't need to say too much more about it. We need to move on to this next detail. The apostrophe that's used. Come, you spirits. She's addressing these absent spirits that she's calling upon to help her. So she said, so we need a discourse marker. Following this, Lady Macbeth calls upon, and then we could get rid of the word come from the quote, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. Now, we know that we need to talk about her apostrophe. But what I would add to this is just the word to. Following this, Lady Macbeth calls upon you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts to unsex me here. Now, what we're going to have to analyse is her calling to the spirits and also this phrase. So first of all, we could say her use of apostrophe shows that she is calling upon the supernatural to help her in her plan, which implies a connection between her and the witches. So then we also need to deal with unsex me here. So use another discourse mark. In addition to this, the way that she asks to be. So we've got another oriented phrase that is built around a verb. Asks to asks, which you change this, the way that she asks these, and you can re-quote this, spirits to unsex me, suggests she wants to rid herself of her femininity. So here we've dealt with the second detail. Now, I would get rid of this detail because this paragraph is already shaping up to be quite big. If you've written about it, fantastic. What we want here is to deal with the antithesis between milk and gall. Further to this, there's another discourse marker. She develops her desire to be hostile and unfeminine when she asks the spirits to, then we can include, take my milk for gall. Here, the use of antithesis between milk and gall shows us her intentions to rid herself of her maternal qualities and to replace them with hatred and hostility. So we're seeing here through this language that she is doing things that are deeply kind of contradictory to the traditional way that we would see, the stereotypical views of women as being nurturing mothers and being full of kind of sympathy and compassion. She's trying to disrupt this, and this is connected to this idea of the disruption of natural order. Her disruption of her gender is connected to that overall nightmarish quality. And then we have the final detail. Finally, Lady Macbeth concludes her soliloquy with a call to the night itself, as she again asks the thick night, and you could separate this quote here to make the grammar better, asks the thick night to pull thee in the dunnest smoke of hell. You can add that little part to the end. The dunnest smoke of hell. So we'll deal first of all with this example, because this is multiple examples of personification. So you say here, she demands that the night cover itself in darkness, which gives the audience, remember we're always talking about a play, a sense of her desire to prevent her crimes being seen. This personification is also evident, using another Oriental phrase, is also evident when she asks to prevent heaven, and this is where you can change context, heaven from peeping through the blanket of the dark. We'll change that so that the grammar fits and is consistent. So again, finally, we need to end this by talking about this example of personification and what it implies. We say, the use of personification in this final section of the soliloquy suggests that Lady Macbeth has identified evil forces in the surroundings and in nature and is calling upon them to assist her evil plan. Now, you could finish here. This is absolutely not a requirement. You could finish here by reflecting on some of the historical context that will come previously in an earlier part of the paper. So you might say something, remember the tentative tone. This might be the result of Shakespeare's attempt to produce a hostile representation of events when the natural social order is disrupted, which is evident in Lady Macbeth's attempt to remove her own gender. So, this little part at the end is absolutely not essential, but if you can make connections between some of that historical context that we've studied and the text itself, then that would be a wonderful thing to do at the concluding section of the paragraph. So again, what you will see here are those same features that we've looked at so far. Topic sentence, combining writer's choice / style and the meaning. Orienter phrases at the beginning of sentences built around verbs that deal with the writer or a character in the play, that focus on what they're doing. Then an embedded quote within that sentence. Then analysis. Using technical terminology, comments on the significance and implied meaning of that particular use of the technical feature. Then following that, every time you change to a new detail, begin with a discourse marker, describe how the detail that you've just spoken about connects to the next one that you're about to, and then repeat this pattern. Orienter phrase, embedded quote, analysis. Then repeat, discourse marker. Describe the connections between second and third, orienter phrase, until you get to the end. So you're basically repeating these details for as many of the different parts of the extract that you intend to talk about. So let's take a look at this paragraph. We'll zoom out a little so you can see the whole thing. Compare it to your own. Have you got all those features in it? Can you see them in this particular example? Does your paragraph differ in some way to this particular model? Thinking about those will, in the end, think about those issues will allow you to understand more deeply the nature of this particular type of